Hello everybody, I'm KC and welcome to an edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's finally talk about the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 7 finale, Shadow Play. And wow. I mean, wow. I thought I was excited about the premise for the last season finale. I thought the last season had subtle foreshadowing to its conclusion, but this was something else. And it just got better and better and better. Well, let's just take a closer look. After Sunburst finds Star Swirl the Beard's old journal in an antique store mystery crate, man, I wish my luck was that good with blind boxes, they discover that not only was Star Swirl the leader of a group of legendary ponies that have all been mentioned this season, not only do they confront the Pony of Shadows, who is also real, but they all disappear at the same time, and there might be a way to bring them back. If you ask me, this was the best way to close what has effectively been the wish fulfillment season. We've had an episode about Celestia and Luna, Applejack's parents, and now we get a massive two-parter with half a dozen equestrian historical figures, including the most famous one. Or infamous, depending on who you ask. And while the build-up to the events of To Where and Back Again was pretty subtle, especially compared to the previous season finales, this may be the most subtle and natural build-up to an event yet. I don't know what synopsis everyone else read, but the only hint I had about this episode was that Star Swirl was going to appear. Not every single pony of legend mentioned in this season. And the fact that they aren't all mentioned in one episode, some are believed to not even be real, there's no mention of them being in any sort of group, and there's no winks to the audience that this is going to be back later, makes the payoff all the more surprising. And it's an episode that, at least for the first part, highlights significant contributions from all of the main six. Pushing the rest of the cast aside to make room for the new conflict or whatever problem Twilight's having has plagued the big adventure episodes for a while now, with one or two exceptions, but with the help of an RPG-style fetch quest, some returning cameos, and a ponified pop culture icon I cannot believe took them this long to make, it gives them each something important to do and makes the return of Star Swirl and the Pillars feel more like a team effort. And that's a good thing, because we're about to get 6 more cast members. And if it seems like I'm skipping over things, it's because most of this first half is dedicated to the discovery that the Pillars can come back and the fetch quest. Trust me, we still have a lot to cover. Like the big debut 5 seasons in the making of Star Swirl the Bearded. This is it. We're finally going to hear the ancient MacGuffin sorcerer speak. Who's he played by? Ian McKellen? Malcolm McDowell? Patrick Stewart?
We did not come here to defeat you. We came to contain you.
Who the heck is that? Hang on a minute, let me just look this up real quick. Okay, so Star Swirl the Bearded is played by Chris Britton. Well, it may not be a celebrity, but this guy's got some impressive credits. From recurring roles in the X-Men cartoon and Death Note, to one-shots of well-known Marvel characters like Odin and Doctor Doom. I like it. It really fits. And for a character with this big of a reputation behind him, he meets the demanding expectations as far as I'm concerned. Oh, and the rest of the historical heroes are brought back, and the very obvious twist that none of the group seem to consider, not even Starlight despite her protests, reversing the seal that contained the Pillars in Limbo, also released the Pony of Shadows. And I know this is dramatic and kind of a dumb move that none of the 9 characters here even thought this could be a possibility, but all I can see here is this gorgeous animation cycle. Did they use what budget they had left on the movie for this? If that fluid movement is just Flash, then damn. Well done. But yeah, we have a new major villain, they're all screwed, except that there's now 15 of them versus one really big guy with a ridiculously awesome design. Even if he's really powerful, it makes sense that he just did what damage he could and then went on his way. But that just gives us more time with the Pillars. And since I haven't reviewed any of the episodes with these guys, now's as good a time as any to say that these guys are awesome. I've already talked about how well planned out their individual introductions were, but from their designs, to their backgrounds, to their strengths in battle, and even their voices, it gives them each distinct personality and a sense of the various cultures all throughout Equestria, especially back then. Though having the previous episodes as a guide does help, since even though you can get a sense of who these ponies are just by looking at them, because there's so many of them and they have to share the screen with an already large cast, there's really not much time to dedicate to each of them. But they all work really well together, and I love how quickly they got along with the main 6. Well, most of them, but we'll get to that. They're basically living expanded lore, and I'm a sucker for pretty much anything that expands on the history of this world. The origins of the elements of harmony, the Pillars meeting in the castle of the 2 sisters, seeing the Siren's banishment to the human world in the flesh. Yeah, give me all that. Speaking of expanding the lore,
this map and Indeed, this very castle are grown from the seed we planted over 1,000 years ago.
Y'all mean the elements came from you?
This is such an amazing addition. I really like that they didn't just make the elements Star Swirl's creation, that they were created by the virtues displayed by him and the pillars. It also explains how Celestia and Luna and Celestia herself were able to use them, since they only seem to embody the strains needed to protect the land rather than the specific traits we've come to know them by. But since this is a big reveal that connects a lot in terms of the history and continuity, and I am a reviewer, it's time for nitpicking! First off, why aren't the pillars, or at least Star Swirl, speaking Old Ponish? At the very least, we saw how Pony spoke 1,000 years ago when Luna came back. You'd think they would stick in a few thys and thous in their first couple of scenes. And if the elements don't embody the known traits of
kindness, laughter, generosity, honesty, and loyalty,
then who wrote the legend where they learned about the elements in the first place? And why was the element of magic unknown? It's the closest one to the original definition. Also, does this explain the rainbow power thing, or are we just never gonna talk about that again? Okay, I'm done. Honestly, if this review didn't take so long to finish and I hadn't rewatched the episode so much, I probably wouldn't have even noticed that stuff. Let's get back to the big things on display here, like Star Swirl. We already talked about his voice, and I love the design they chose for him. Luna knows I could never decide on one in the comics. But after all this time, how is his actual character? Well, honestly, he's
He's an asshole.
Don't get me wrong though, that makes perfect sense. Some people did find just how dismissive Star Swirl was kind of jarring, but frankly, it fits perfectly. What do we know about Star Swirl? That he was strong and intelligent, famous for inventing many magical spells, and is implied to be somewhat of a recluse because of that. The only major spell that we know he didn't finish was one that required understanding true friendship to complete, and any friend Star Swirl apparently had could have a strategic point to them. Star Swirl may be a well-respected historical figure in Equestria, but is it really that hard to believe the unicorn who was hailed as a scholar and a hero in a position of status high enough to teach the future rulers of the land, who lived in a time where the solution to any threat whatsoever was immediate eternal imprisonment, might not be the most open and understanding guy? I think this was one of the most difficult characters to balance in MLP so far, especially considering just how much we've heard about him. Star Swirl had to be both a wise and brave sorcerer and an arrogant, close-minded pony, but they really made this work, and even though it wasn't what I expected, it fits what they established about the character in the end. And I love when a series can do that. But there was more to be divisive about in this episode besides Star Swirl, because there always is in season finales. The most divisive thing in this episode is Twilight and how she handles things. Some say she should really know better than to follow these questionable choices blindly. Others say her hero worship of Star Swirl is clouding her judgment and is completely in character. And I lean more towards the latter. First of all, Twilight's overwhelming enthusiasm at this revelation that she could actually meet Star Swirl the Bearded is hilarious and frankly adorable.
darling, your diorama! I made more.
And I think we learned a long time ago, through all of her time with Celestia, that Twilight has a major hero worship problem. Even though it's clear to us that Star Swirl is being a complete jerk, Twilight holds him in such high regard that she doubts herself with every dismissive response. And yeah, it may not be Twilight's best feature, but it's part of who she is. And I do like how the others mentioned to Star Swirl that she got her wings by completing one of his spells. It's a nice moment that shows just because Twilight will swallow the harsh words Star Swirl says, the others won't. Sure, Twilight shouldn't have released the pillars without thinking if the Pony of Shadows could get through too. That was a major blunder, and I was yelling at my screen just like the rest of you. But think of it this way. If Twilight hadn't interfered, they wouldn't have found out the truth about the Pony of Shadows. And while Starlight keeps telling Twilight that this is probably a friendship problem and to not just go along with everything Star Swirl says, it's still Twilight's choice to help him, and it's her actions that convince Star Swirl and the others. I'd say Twilight is still the star of the story, and Starlight just pushed her in the right direction, because that's what friends do. In fact, we find out that the Pony of Shadows was once an ordinary unicorn named Stygian, which is apparently a real word that means very dark. Yeah, Stygian not only knew the pillars, but brought them together as a team to defend Equestria from growing threats. He's basically the Nick Fury of the group.
I recognize the council has made a decision, but given that it's a stupid-ass decision, I've elected to ignore it.
Well, given what we know about the history of this world, evil stuff really seems to gravitate towards that time period, so that was a good move on Stygian's part. The back and forth over what to do about Stygian is the most interesting part of the second half. When you really think about it, most of this two-parter is just a bunch of ponies talking about what to do next, with only a few scenes of actual exploits. But the dialogue is so well written and comes from a bunch of characters with different perspectives that it's just as engaging as any battle. Even though I kinda wish they had one more confrontation with the Pony of Shadows before the final battle, but that's just me. Not to mention that this whole situation is a great time for Starlight to shine. Not only is she wary of this whole idea from the get-go, but she also keeps reminding Twilight of what her beliefs have accomplished in the past, despite Star Swirl's objections. And even though she graduated at the beginning of this season, I think this is where she truly made the transition from student to a friend and equal, with one of the best lines related to Reformation in the entire series. When it came to Stygian, he just wanted to be as strong as his friends, but due to a lot of miscommunication, it evolved into this current situation. And I really like how both sides are at fault here. Both Star Swirl and the Pillars and Stygian jumped to conclusions and took the extreme route instead of talking things out. While the solution might have been simple, the problem wasn't as simple as one side was right and one side was wrong. And while some people do have a problem with Stygian being the latest in a long line of reformed villains, the way this journey played out seems to be more well received than the last couple of reformations, which all I can say is, thanks Celestia. Quite frankly, I was getting tired of the idea of displaying successful attempts at compassion, understanding, in family-oriented entertainment being scrutinized over and over again. I know that criticism is still out there, but in this case, the result of the final conflict seems to be pretty well regarded, so I'm letting it go for now. And it really shows how the philosophy of the power of friendship has bettered Equestria since Star Swirl's day. Instead of being blasted in the face without a word, some are heard out and listened to, are given the chance to find a better way of living or work through their own loneliness once a hoof is reached out to them. Or they're a complete lost cause. Seriously, why do people think that all the good villains are gone? If they didn't make those attempts, who knows what Equestria would be like now?
How much blood will spill until everybody does what they were always going to have to do from the very beginning? Sit down and talk!
I'd be really curious to see how Star Swirl would have reacted if he had heard what happened to Luna. I know Stygian was a good friend of his, but it would have been an interesting thing to see him process. Would he still stick to his convictions of
Once a villain, always a villain.
if he had heard what happened to one of his former students? If you ask me, this episode highlights why this message works so well in this show without coming off as contrived or unrealistic. And with their friendship mended and the Pillars stronger than ever, naturally they'll have to return to their own time to...
The realm has grown, and I believe I'll have a look around before I settle in any one place.
They're sticking around? They're sticking around? I am so happy! Just think of the possibilities! I know that at the time of making this video, we're like 12 episodes into Season 8 and we haven't seen them since, but just the possibility that Star Swirl the Bearded and half a dozen remarkable figures in equestrian history can come back at any time is just begging to be explored. They could have easily written them out. They could have had them sent back to their own time or have to sacrifice them to stop that darkness that consumed Stygian or something. But no, the writers knew potential when they saw it and decided to stick it in their back pockets for a rainy day. And they also snuck in some lines to get the evil conquering team of legend away from Canterlot before the whole Storm King thing happened. Good job covering your flanks there, guys. But in the end, overall, Shadow Play was a remarkable end to a remarkable season, bringing life to this world's interesting past while highlighting what's so great about its present. From the expansion of the history, to the animation, to the voice acting, to the writing overall, this is definitely one of the best season finales yet, and it has a lot of competition. Season 8 has a lot to live up to, but after seeing what was great about the past and the present, I'm sure the future of My Little Pony will be just as memorable. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.